Today's episode is brought to you by Patch Day.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Can you really say as always when I'm coming right off of being too sick to podcast last week? Is that a thing? Anyway,
I've been saying as always for at least 177 episodes, okay?
Yeah, and I haven't missed many of them, so I guess I got to give myself a pass, but I do feel bad. Decided to save everybody the constant coughing, sneezing, sniffling mess that I was on Monday last week. It was brutal. But yeah, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I feel like I've been up for like 5 days without sleep. But
That's
I've definitely
how I feel
slept.
on Friday of every single week.
Yeah, but definitely a lot of stuff going on for both of us, and a lot of stuff going on in the world of Overwatch, as alluded to by the intro. We'll be talking about all sorts of different stuff coming right up. But first, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping. We are now officially still a top 5 podcast, Overwatch podcast on iTunes. So thumbs up to us. This is just for us. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed to us on iTunes. Thank you to everyone who's left a review. If you haven't already, please do leave a review on iTunes. I know we haven't asked in quite some time, but I'm sure there's a lot of new people here. If you're listening on iTunes, it really does mean a lot. We want to be number one.
We're coming for you, Omnic
Yeah,
Lab.
we're coming for you, Omnic Lab. We actually got to get ready for the Omnic Noon blowout.
Oh my god, it's almost my birthday. Let's not talk about it.
It's soon. It's soon. It's coming up. Omnic Noon. We're gonna have to hash out the details for that very soon. But yeah, so definitely leave us a review on iTunes, and if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you're subscribing on Spotify as well, or just do both. Just subscribe and listen on both. Download on both, subscribe on both, leave reviews on both.
Yeah.
Actually, just everywhere, anywhere you can. Just go on a random subreddits and say, "I love High Noon Podcast." I leave a 5-star review. Thanks. On any subreddit, the Gordon Ramsay subreddit, please. I can't wait for someone to yell at me for saying that. We had a brand new episode of Around the Payload last week. We had the one and only Blazing Bob. We had Boobasaurus, newcomer Ramses, and longtime ATP alumnus Volumel. And it was a good episode. We had, the dynamic, I'm like playing around with the different dynamics. We've had a couple of newbies and a couple of veterans. I'm pretty sure we've had all veterans. We haven't had all newbies in quite some time, but the 3 veterans and 1 newbie is also an interesting dynamic in and of itself, especially with someone like Ramses, who really, I think, took to the underdog and really, I don't want to say try-harded it because that has a negative connotation, but he did a really good job. So definitely check out that episode.
Try hard.
Yeah, there are some people who just have fun with it, and there are some people who try hard, and you are definitely in the latter category. But it's always fun for me as the host. So definitely check that one out. Of course, make sure you check out Black Watch Report as well. I believe I remembered seeing something in Discord about them delaying. I don't know if they're delaying a day or if they're delaying a week, but definitely check out their Twitter and their media following, and if not, just check out the High Noon Podcast Discord. You can message either Kyle or Thorn there for any details there. But of course, that last week they had their episode going, as always, talking about the Tier 2 and below Overwatch scene, and definitely a lot going on there. And of course, Foul Play out this week as well to get your fantasy Overwatch League fix. But enough about the housekeeping. Let's talk a little bit about what we did last week. Death, anything fun and exciting for you?
I've just been in the middle of like a hell week at work, so I haven't done a whole lot, to be perfectly honest with you. I even had like days where I was working like 11 hours and didn't get to take a lunch and stuff like that. Like that was the worst day. Easy. It was
that's brutal.
Pretty brutal. Maybe a little less than 11 hours, but either way, it feels longer when you don't get a break and stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, though, I've succumbed to the peer pressure of the Blevins and my friend Clay to start playing Teamfight Tactics.
I tried a new tactic this time. It was
did, and it was not annoyingly effective. Yeah, you didn't peer pressure me even a little bit. It was the most passive aggressive thing ever. You didn't even try to convince me it was good.
On 2 occasions, I said, "Hey, this auto chess thing is fun. The Riot one is coming out. That's probably the best one if you want to play it." And you said, "Absolutely not." And I go, "Okay, it's fine."
Now, in fairness to my eventual reversal of deciding to play it, my main reason for not even wanting to try auto chess or any of its variants was I knew I would like it before I'd ever touched it.
True, you did say that. You did say that.
I didn't want to add that level of gaming commitment to my current repertoire of games. And then I tried it and really didn't like it, like out of the gate.
That is also true.
I wanted it to be Artifact. I wanted it to be a more complex, closer to a card game style of thing. And it's just not that. It's a quality strategy game in its own right with its ups and its downs and its RNG elements. And when I figured out that I needed to not hold it to the standard of a game, the quality of what I thought Artifact was in pure gameplay, whether you like the monetization of it, whatever, different story. But just the game structure itself and how it played out. When I stopped trying to like compare it to that or Magic or Hearthstone or any other card game, I did really start to enjoy it for what it was. So been having a lot of fun with that. Too much fun. But just been messing around with that a little bit. Kept some Overwatch going, and as you mentioned, it's patch day. Rolox hit live servers, so next week I'll be talking all about my placement games, I'm sure, and what I am in each role. And
shoot, I might be talking about my placement games.
Why my primary role is my lowest SR, and why that drives me nuts, because that's about to happen, because it did on PTR. But yeah, on my main, I've just like never tanked. I always did it on alts and things like that. So at least not near as often as I played support. And apparently DPS, I don't know, I got like a surprisingly good DPS placement. I was like, oh, they don't know. Nobody tell them. They can't play another game. But yeah, so been having some fun with the PTR, what's going on the live now, and I'm really looking forward to that being on live servers and bringing people back to the game, making people more committed, even if they didn't leave, things like that. It's doing that for my play group, so hopefully it does for yours, and I hope you guys really do enjoy the big change that is dropped today.
Yeah, definitely huge for Overwatch. For me, I've also been grinding the TFT world. I've done some other content stuff that I won't get into because it's not important for this, but I've been having a lot of fun with TFT as well. Nice. But let's move on here and let's talk about news. Got a couple of big pieces of news here. Fozix has left the Justice. Oh man, the timing on this one is interesting. I didn't look too much into this. Did they give like a reasoning, or was there anything more than just a PR statement for this?
Not that I've seen, and we're being a little careful about this one because there's one particular Discord member, Shrugoff, shoutouts to Shrugoff, who's particularly pained to have to hear us discuss this.
No,
big Fozix
relief
fan.
for him. He gets to change teams now, and Fozix comes back and plays.
Well, but they're winning now, right? So like, you kind of want him to get played a little bit.
Maybe that's why they're winning. I mean,
Ark's a serious upgrade, but in all seriousness, I thought Fozix got a really bad rap unnecessarily for the performance of this team. I never thought he was the major problem or the primary issue or things like that. His play wasn't perfect, but they brought in Ark. I believe they still have Yan Yu on the bench as well, so you don't need 3 flex supports.
Right.
And even if they don't, Fozix as solid of a player as I think he is not an upgrade to Arc and isn't going to be anytime soon. So I think this made sense. It was a little weird to like make it official and no longer on the roster now. I didn't quite get the timing of that, but I don't fully understand the financial aspect of it. So maybe in some way it helped one side or the other to do it now. I really couldn't tell you. As far as what impact this will have on the roster, none. Fozix wasn't in their plans going forward. He's not been on the stage for some time, so this is really a non-issue for the team itself. And as you said, it gives Fozix the opportunity to pursue something in contenders publicly and try to get himself onto a new team or a new situation to start the grind to get back into the league. So I expect him to be a name we hear involved in scrims and tryouts in the off season, because I really do think if you sit down and look at the tape on him, and granted this was before we got replays and all those things, I just, like I said, I never thought he was really a primary issue for them, and we've seen him be a productive member of teams in the past. So I think he'll be in the running going into season 3 to maybe try out and work his way onto a roster here. So best of luck to him.
Yeah, definitely. The more I think about the timing, the more I guess it kind of makes sense. Obviously the Justice are doing better, but he's not playing. There's not even a playoff dream. There's not even a stage playoff dream of like, well, I kind of want to be on the team at least and give the guys support and be on the, even being on the bench for a playoff run or something like that could be interesting or fun or valuable, but that's not the case. So it's basically, for all intents and purposes, their season is over. His season would be over for them. So from his perspective at least, he might as well try to get those the tryouts and get the talks started, which he might not be able to do if he's sitting on the active roster or the active roster for Justice,
right? Or at least can't publicly like put out the tweet like looking for team contenders, Overwatch League that you see these guys do when they leave their teams. And with contenders going into the playoff season now, I mean, there's teams that didn't make it that are now recruiting and trying out and things like that. So it's probably a good time for him to be an established free agent, so people know to reach out to him and contact him. So again, best of luck to Fozix. Hope to see him on the stage again.
Yeah, no ill will, at least from us there whatsoever. The next piece of news hits us a little more closely, considering we've been big proponents of him, and obviously are big Defiant fans. And also, Bishop has been on the show, but Bishop has been relieved of his duties on the Toronto Defiant. The tweet from Defiant says our coaches, Optidox and Moby Dick, Optidox, Moby Dick, and Baroy will take over coaching responsibilities for the remainder of the season. Head coach Bishop has been relieved of duties, effective immediately.
Yeah, now we've said it before. I'll say it every time they put out these announcements. The wording in these announcements means nothing. But the wording they chose to use in this case, I do think is telling.
It leads us to believe something.
Relieved of duties effective immediately is verbiage that an NFL team would use when they fired somebody.
Yeah, that's the PR way to say fired.
Right. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that he was let go and terminated against his will, and outside his control, just informed by the team. We're going in a different direction.
Right.
It did come shortly after being mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Right. So I do get it a little bit, but at the same time, are you really going to get a chance to evaluate Optidox and Moby Dick? And Baroy's more of a stats guy. That's the Winston's lab dude, and I think he's more of an analyst, and I don't think he's actually going to be sitting down and coaching the team, but I don't know. That certainly could be the case. It's curious to me they didn't name an interim head coach, so there's not a top to this tree here, which I think is a disservice to everybody involved. So I don't know. Theoretically, they're evaluating the rest of the coaching staff to see if their next head coach is already in the building. So we'll have to see how that goes. I don't think it needs to be a major problem for the organization as long as they're able to make a good, solid hire. But it is rough, though, because the number of times between the two of us over the past season that we've said that Bishop was the thing that made, moves we questioned a little bit, trading away Envy and bringing gods in and all these things. Our trust was placed in Bishop, not in the players in the jerseys, right? We trusted Bishop to get the most out of the talent that was brought in, whoever that talent was. And now he's gone. So as a fan, my confidence is a little bit shook, but the optimism is still there. I mean, they've still brought in the players that they've brought in that are still performing very well. They played this past weekend, I believe, under the new coach, right? The announcement came shortly after you guys recorded. So I'm looking to see when the actual announcement was. Yeah, last Wednesday.
Definitely before the games.
Yeah, so they had already gone into this past week under those circumstances and did drop the game to the Mayhem, though that's not, I don't think, a doom and gloom kind of a scenario anymore, the way they've been playing. And also 2-1, very closely contested match against the Seoul Dynasty later in the week. So still getting decent results, still looking improved from stages 2 and 3, which is, I think, all you can really ask for at this point. I mean, they are eliminated, so there's nothing to gain from the wins. We don't have to be upset about them as fans. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Logix. I still think there's questions on the tank line, though I do think Gods has really panned out. He's been a big playmaker for the team. There's a lot here to build around for Toronto. So I would prefer personally that Bishop be the one that was kind of calling the shots and organizing things. But we'll have to wait and see. We got to obviously reserve judgment to see who they do hire to replace him in the long term. It could certainly be an upgrade. Bishop was far from, I think, the best coach in the league. I also think he was far from one of the worst, or far from needing to be replaced or a problem. But again, the amount of information we get about the impact that these coaches have is a lot of it's just, I mean, the team's winning, right? So it's got to be the coach's fault. It just kind of like makes sense, and that's a great way to shake up an organization. But is he to blame, or things like that? We just don't know. We don't know anything about how they operate. And really, it's a results-based business. So I guess the record is what you need to know. And this season did not, especially after a 5-2 stage 1, start to the season. Things clearly did not go the way they envisioned or wanted to see it go. So I'm not surprised by this. I'm just nervous about it.
Yeah, and I think, we have more of a painted opinion of this because we have been following Bishop for quite some time. We obviously have the connection because he's been on the show. We've seen some of the things that he's done for years now. But from the perspective of the org, the one thing I know about Toronto Defiant is that they have a lot of traditional sports people in the organization. They have a lot of advisors and investment from traditional sports within that organization, and a lot of the support staff is also from traditional sports. So, like, if this is traditional sports and we're assuming it's in a league that's not 2 years old, have a team has an underwhelming performance in a season. Obviously, small sample size, but they started out really strong, and then adversity hit, and they didn't make it. They made some changes on the roster, and it didn't quite get there. There's a couple of things you can do as an organization if you want to save face. You can change players, which they have, and you can change. You can either change your coaching staff, or you can double down on your coaching staff and say, "Hey, you know what? We had an off season, but we put all of our faith and confidence in, our head coach Bishop. Here's his plan for next year. Blah blah blah." The organization has to make that judgment call. Are they willing to put their chips on Bishop and move all in on him and double down? Because otherwise, it's like, well, what are you guys going to change from the? Because the teams are not necessarily appealing to us as content creators and super fan diehard analyze everything people. They're trying to appeal to mass audience fans too, right? Like maybe they do follow, but they might not have followed Overwatch as much as we have for as long as we have. They might not know Bishop as well as we do. So if you don't have that confidence in Bishop from the organization standpoint, maybe it's just like, you know what, we probably could have kept him and been fine with it, but like we're gonna shake it up. We're gonna ride out the rest of the season because it's a lame duck for the rest of it, and we're gonna invest in a new coach come season 3, and we're gonna go from there and put our confidence there. I mean, it makes sense. I personally don't know anything behind the scenes, so I'm not saying any of this from any information I've gotten. I haven't talked to anyone about it in this specific case. That's just my conjecture, but it makes sense from the organization standpoint. Even if they're like, you know what, we could probably work with Bishop and do this, it's like we need to make a public-facing move to keep fan confidence in the team. And like this is like this happens all the time in the NFL and the NBA, right? Like bad season for a coach, they get fired. It's not the it's not the end of the world. You are muted right now, and I don't know if it's your end or my end.
It was my end. I muted it because I had to change our server. My apologies for that. Yeah, it's a little less common to happen, I think, in the coach's first year, but again, not unheard of.
Right.
And also a different situation too. Like Bishop theoretically got to build this roster, work with the GM to choose, pick and choose the players he wanted. So there's
a lot of different
live and
things
die by
sure.
the results, right?
Yeah.
He didn't inherit a roster and have to turn it around in 1 year or anything.
Right.
Which I think gives you a little bit of extra leeway. And it does make sense to me from the perspective of looking at the changes they've made and looking at the roster changes I would expect them to make going forward. You think Logix and Ivy are probably still going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Mangachu's probably still going to be there. I don't think there's any reason to replace Neko. I think Aid is a good main support, though maybe they want to make a change there just for shot calling purposes or what have you. But between him and Roki, I think they're in an okay spot at main support. And really, it's just like the main tank spot to me. And is that one position enough to take you from whatever their abysmal record is over the last 3 stages of the season into a serious playoff contender? It seems it's a little bit difficult to kind of buy into that, right? That one player on the roster. I mean, look at Houston. They arguably made a very big upgrade at their most needed position and still kind of stayed in the same boat.
Right.
Why? Because theoretically coaching staff, right? At least if you buy into what my thought process on it, then you kind of look at the coaching staff as not the reason why they aren't the number 1 team, but the reason why they're not 3 or 4 spots better and still fighting for a playoff spot, something like that. So so it makes sense, because if you want to make a bigger change and you don't anticipate large shakeups to the roster, it's got to come from the coaching staff. So I'm talking myself into agreeing with it and buying into it more as we discuss it, which I guess is good.
It's a flashy way to make a arguably superficially large change to the organization without significantly impacting the bottom line of the team, which, saying that out loud makes me kind of sick to my stomach thinking of it that way, but that them's the way of the road. There we go. That's what I wanted to use. Way of the road.
Hey, Tim's an Overwatch streamer again, so it works.
Way of the road, brother. So I mean, again, I haven't got any comment on that. Maybe I'll get something next week, but yeah, this one definitely caught me off guard. I remember seeing it and just being like, wait, did I read that right?
Yeah. We didn't even talk about it, and I'm pretty sure it was just because neither of us wanted to when we saw it. We're just like, oh.
That kind of sucks. But, wish the best for Bishop. I hope he finds a place. I hope he finds a place on a team or, doing whatever it is he aspires to do, because he's, his track record definitely speaks for itself. Albeit it's been up and down, but it's certainly had its moments and definitely been good at times. So let's move on here to
it's tournament talk.
We've got some matches to talk about. Not quite as crazy of a week as last week, where it was Upset City, but we start off on Thursday. Vancouver Titans beat the London Spitfire 3-2. The Paris Eternal win 3-2 over the Philadelphia Fusion. Florida Mayhem take out Toronto Defiant 3-1, and the Guangzhou Charge beat Seoul Dynasty 3-2. Next up, we've got Washington Justice winning 3-1 over the Boston Uprising, LA Gladiators winning 3-2 over the Dallas Fuel, San Francisco Shock winning 3-1 over the Shanghai Dragons, and NYXL eking out a 3-2 victory over the Hangzhou Spark. On Saturday, start off the day, London Spitfire eliminating the Houston Outlaws 3-1. Seoul Dynasty winning 3-1 over Toronto Defiant. Los Angeles Valiant winning 2-1 over the Florida Mayhem. Hangzhou Spark winning 3-1 over the Chengdu Hunters. And rounding out the week on Sunday, we have Vancouver Titans winning 4-0 versus the Philadelphia Fusion. Washington Justice 3-2 over the Houston Outlaws. San Francisco Shock 4-0 over the Dallas Fuel. And Guangzhou Charge beating the New York Excelsior 4-0. What do we got for some storylines for this week of last week's matches?
Well, I mean, really, the thing to look at here, we're so close down to it, is really just playoff odds and what impact did those results have on the races. To start things off, we're going to take a look at the top 6 race. We've got Vancouver, New York, and San Francisco locked into the top 6. They can lose out the rest of the way. They will still be in top 6, will not need to play in the play-ins. They are good to go. As far as the other teams still alive for 4, 5, and 6, the right to not put their fate in the hands of their own performance, I guess, to put their fate in their own hands. They just have the bye week through the play-ins.
Right.
The Gladiators, the London Spitfire, the Hangzhou Spark, the Atlanta Reign, the Shanghai Dragons, the Guangzhou Charge, and the Philadelphia Fusion are all technically still alive for the top 6. Philadelphia and Guangzhou are not making the top 6, I'll tell you that right now. Philly comes in at a whopping 0.01% chance or something to make it, and Guangzhou is like under 1% chance as well, or 1%, 1 point something percent.
1 out of 10,000 for Philly.
Right there, it's like literally 16 out of 100,000. I think is what Captain Planet put in his little infographic.
Yeah.
So they're not making it into the top 6, but it's technically still possible. And people like to say that technically correct is the best kind of correct. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there's a very, very slight chance. Now going into the wild card round, we've got the LA Gladiators, the London Spitfire, the Hangzhou Spark, all locked in. No matter what, they will be part of the playoff weekend unless they do better than that and lock up the top 6 spot. Now, also pretty much locked in and going to make it, but I don't think it's mathematically so, is the Seoul Dynasty. They're going to be there in the wild card round. You can basically ink that, but I think there's a very small, minute chance they're not. Also, and this is in order, this list of most likely to least likely, according to Deathblow math. Take that for what it's worth. It's iffy, but ballpark generally correct. Guangzhou Charge is Shanghai Dynasty, Atlanta Reign.
Oh, hold on a second.
Did I do it?
Shanghai Dynasty. We got the blitz. We got the blitz. Man.
Fine. The Seoul Dragons.
There you go.
Now we got it right. No, Shanghai Dragons, Atlanta Reign, Philly Fusion, Chengdu Hunters, LA Valiant, Dallas Fuel, and Paris Eternal, all in the running for the play-in tournament. Odds on Paris not quite as bad as some of the other odds we've talked about already, but not looking good at all. And I think if you actually realistically look at Dallas's remaining schedule and say how likely are they to win these games, you'd find their odds to not look too great either. So things are really starting to shape up. like you said, a couple of teams got eliminated. Anybody not mentioned is done. Thanks standings page for not having the eliminated tag or whatever that you put on the broadcast.
Why would they? It's not like a super relevant thing going into these matches and just an easy built-in storyline to talk about. No, we wouldn't want that on our customer-facing product that people check throughout the week all the time. Why would you want that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not needed.
I mean, it's super hard to do. So I mean,
wait, it's on their graphics already.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully we see that get an update for next year. But I believe those are all the teams in the running. Everybody else should be completely mathematically eliminated and done. Yes. Rip Outlaws. But yeah,
and Rip Defiant and Rip Mayhem.
Yes.
And,
every team I care about basically. But all jokes aside, things are really coming into form here and taking shape, and we're able to really focus in on some of the matches that are really, really important going forward, and some of them that are just for memes, basically. But it's also really fun and been fun, and I think when you look at how tough of outs Florida and Washington specifically are right now, and honestly, Houston looked better after they were mathematically eliminated. Once the pressure came off, they looked better. Toronto looks considerably better as well lately. So, and all the bottom tier teams did get a bit of a bump, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the spoiler scenarios play out over the last couple of weekends. So keep watching, unless both of them are mathematically out, and then do what you want.
Maybe we'll see wacky stuff. Maybe
we've got like Washington versus Atlanta this weekend, and that's a huge playoff match for Atlanta. So games like that are going to be a lot of fun to watch and keep track of. Make sure you keep an eye out for them. We'll try to highlight them when they come up. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird, but the removal of the stage playoffs has almost made for better Overwatch, because now these teams have literally nothing to play for, but also have no pressure whatsoever to really perform, at least from that aspect of it.
It's almost like the stage playoffs were always pointless. What do you know?
Your words, not mine. Though maybe I agree.
I've been saying them for long enough. I think people know that already.
So definitely going to be interesting there, but we will talk about all those matches as we start off on Thursday with, speaking of matches that mean absolutely nothing, we got the Boston Uprising versus the Florida Mayhem here. I'm going to be honest with you, I forgot Boston Uprising was a team in the Overwatch League. I forgot they existed. They're not good enough to be relevant whatsoever, and they're not spectacularly bad enough to be talked about. So they're just like one of those teams that kind of exists.
Yeah, they've been on a downswing for quite some time now, and it's just not looking like it's going to be getting any better. They're currently 19th in the standings. In their defense, they're actually, looking at it, possibly not mathematically eliminated yet, because they've played so few games. They've only played 3 of their stage 4 matches so far, compared to Houston's 6. So they're clearly behind in just sheer games played. They're tied for 16th right now. Wait, no, is this? I get stage 3. I need to go to playoffs. Where is Boston? Okay, yeah, they're down there, but they got a couple matches to make up here. They need 4 more. Out they are 9, 10, 11, 4 wins out. So they would have to win out. Chengdu would have to lose out. Valiant would have to go 1-3. And this is all to get tied. And we can go -28. So yeah, I think there's a tiny minuscule chance.
All right, so
that
not
they get
for
in
nothing
there.
here.
Yeah, so I guess there's one more team in the running for play-ins, but yeah, sliding in the wrong direction. Odds similar to the laughable ones of Guangzhou and Philly to make the top 6. Obviously, their odds to make it into play-ins are considerably better, since they're still alive for top 6. But it's the low number of games that makes their range of outcomes decent, at least.
Right.
But there's just no reason to expect them to turn things around. Their main tank play is not comfortable in this meta. They're playing DPS players on off tank now. There's just all sorts of craziness going on. They did get Stellar in, and I do think they looked a little better with him in. And I'm blanking on who it was that went to the off tank role off the top of my head. But they benched RCK. I do remember that.
For some reason, I was saying it's Color Hex, but I don't think it was.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think he was playing off tank, or maybe they could have even switched him around. For all I know, I don't think so though. I think I would have remembered that. But yeah. So, anyways, they got one of their DPS players playing off tank last I saw, unless that was just a short term thing. But yeah, they're just floundering. They're not playing Aim God. Something is clearly going on there. Persia's still their flex support.
Yeah.
Is a big problem. Granted, he's looked a little better over the last couple weeks. He just still doesn't look up to snuff. And they traded or benched their two best players going into the season now.
True.
And it's just not been paying off.
They traded more than they traded. They're benching Aim God. They traded Gamsu and Striker.
Gamsu as well.
Yeah, Striker and Gamsu. So, yeah, I mean, this is the Boston game, right? Like, they don't play with the flashy players. They're playing the Moneyball strat, at least as far as we can tell. That's what it looks like. And, I mean, Season 1, it worked. I mean, again, we don't know these things, so it's conjecture, but dollar for dollar, they were probably the best team in the league last year. If you're going off of perception of players equating to public perception of players equating to their salary, at least. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Boston's been. They've been getting a lot of value out of not a lot of, raw talent, but it's not been up to snuff lately, but enough about this team that maybe has a chance. What are we predicting here? I'm predicting the crushing of that chance immediately. I'm picking Florida 3-1 here.
Same, 3-1. Florida looks solid. Fate's looking good in the main tank role. Gargoyle's been a beast. Like, thank you for finally fixing the off tank problem. But last week they ran that roster that I thought was probably their best one going into it. I mean, you guys are still eliminated. I'd still love to see the rest of the players you brought in. Give us something to see on them to know. Give yourself that ability to know what they are on stage, since we know it can look very different from what they were in contenders to what they do in scrims compared to what they actually put out there when they're on the stage and the matches matter. So I think they're doing themselves a disservice by not playing them, but at the same time, their fans are hungry for wins and have got to be really enjoying this a little bit of a run they're going on. I think Gargoyle makes a big difference for them. His Roadhog play has been great, which works out phenomenally for this meta. So I expect him to halt hook Boston right out of the playoff race and take them out here. So give me Florida 3-1 as well.
Yeah. Also, things that Florida Mayhem fans are looking forward to that they now can see are swoosh with the walkouts again.
Yes,
that happened.
I always said they should have kept him on as a mascot, and it appears they finally taken my advice.
Well, I mean, we do know that Bare Hands listens to the shows.
He does.
So, I mean,
I'm more confident that people in Florida hear things we say more than any other team.
True. Next up, we've got the Dallas Fuel versus the Hangzhou Spark. This seems like about as clear of a tier difference in teams as we're going to see for most of these matches.
Yeah, I mean, OGE's alive, which is great. It was good to see that. Unfortunately, the team doesn't look as good as they did previously with him anymore. Weird. It's almost like a stage and a half off. It would just mess us with team synergy.
What is up with Dallas players and just being like, I'm just not going to play?
I don't know, but he's clearly there. It doesn't make any sense. Along with bringing him in, they benched Unko, brought Harry Hook in. I don't have any reason to think that was injury or illness based. I did see Unko like 2Qing with Soon or something like that on stream, like the next day or maybe after the matches were over. I don't remember exactly. So he's around. Theoretically, no reason why he's not playing other than they're trying to shake things up. it feels a little late to be doing that particular shakeup to me. I think bring OGE back because Trill has not been terrible, but it's just not been the same. You're not getting the adequate replacement level there, especially when you factor in team performance. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what roster they're gonna field, and I don't have any confidence that it's gonna work out. I think they've done themselves too much of a disservice with the tank swap earlier in the season, and switching back now is too late. They're not as practiced at it as Seoul is, who does it every single week, so it hurts them a little more. So yeah, give me Hangzhou here 3-1.
Yeah, I got the full 4-0, but that's just my lack of Dallas enthusiasm and support there shining through. Next up, we've got Seoul Dynasty, I need to make sure I said that correctly, versus the Shanghai Dragons. Okay. This one's a little bit weird because both these teams have kind of seemed wishy-washy over the past few weeks. I mean, Shanghai, we looked at it before. They've only played one match a week, I think, for all of the weeks so far. So they've got a small sample size, kind of like Boston did or does right now. They lost to Shock. They lost to Titans, which is obviously most teams have lost to those two teams. But they also lost to Toronto, which as much as I love Toronto and as much as I believe that they're getting better and looking better, it's still not a good look for a team that going into this stage, we were talking about them being a top caliber team, not necessarily the top team. Some people were thinking and saying that at least, but they're just not. I'm not confident in either team, but when I'm not confident in a team, my lack of confidence just gives me more confidence in Seoul because they seem to prove me wrong every time. I think that they can't lose and they can't possibly throw, and they do, and then I think that they can't possibly win, and they do. So I'm going with Seoul here, 3-1.
Yeah, it's definitely, as you said, two teams that are very difficult to pin down. Seoul for the obvious reasons. Shanghai's reasons are a little bit newer. But the 3-1 loss to San Francisco last week, I thought they played pretty well. Less okay with the 2-1 loss to the Toronto Defiant. I mean, I loved it. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, I was very happy about it.
As far as my confidence in the Dragons goes, that is a little tough to stomach. But I want to look back at week 1 of this stage. They played against, we had the Shanghai Dynasty matchup, saying it on purpose that time. Plus I'm already the Blitz, so I don't
can't be
to
more
care.
the Blitz.
Right. It's a binary state. Oh, man. But yeah, so I think that history is going to repeat itself here. I think that told us how these teams stack up. Shanghai wasn't, kind of in a similar situation that week. They came off the loss from Vancouver, but were able to stabilize things. Seoul is a team that lacks that kind of top end ability. And if Shanghai struggles, Seoul's going to be just fine and probably win. But looking at the map pool, it's a little bit friendly, I think, for the sniper play. I think we're going to see more DM than Youngjin in this matchup. It doesn't have to go that way, but we're looking at Ilios, Hanamura, Blizzard World, and Route 66. Those are all maps where if you want to play the Widowmaker, you can. I'm going to, for the sake of deciding a winner here, because otherwise I think it's razor thin and super close. I'm going to say Shanghai has the chance to bring DM in. I think they look better when they have DM in. So if they can unleash him, they're going to get the 3-1 win here, which means Blevins.
We need our good friend. Yes.
Let's go tails for Shanghai and heads for Seoul, because I hate Seoul's walkout music. And it's heads for Seoul because the coin apparently doesn't care about my taste in music.
There you go.
Which seems rude.
Yeah, that definitely is rude. But Gladiator! Sorry. I know that's not Seoul's music. Moving on to Friday, we've got the Washington Justice versus the Atlanta Reign. Washington on a little bit of a tear here, at least comparatively to the rest of their season. Last week, they just barely... Oh, no, I'm looking at the wrong week. Whoops. Looking at the wrong week. Last week, they beat the Houston Outlaws by the skin of their teeth and crushed the Uprising. So still on the tear. Whether it's as dominant as people were thinking after they beat the Titans, I'm not sure. Atlanta is another one of those teams I throw in with Seoul, where it's like, they can beat anyone. They can definitely lose to anybody. Washington at least looks consistent here. And when one team is consistent and the other team's not consistent, I'm going with the consistency. I want Washington 3-1.
Yeah, it's what a world we live in. I take 1 week off, Blevins, and now it would just be silly not to pick the Washington Justice.
That's true.
Here we are. So I have Washington going. I mean, Atlanta looks good too. Erster's been an absolute beast
that is true
on the DPS role. It's really unlocked him. So I think this one has the potential to be very, very close. Houston is not as good so far in this meta as Atlanta is. That was 3-2. But man, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about, and Bren borrowed your analysis on the broadcast this week. Janus can't feed in this meta. You put him on Orisa, all 4 legs, no movement abilities whatsoever. It's not possible for the man to feed, or it's way more difficult. And as a result, it's really freed up the rest of this team to actually play Overwatch. And there's so much attention on the DPS line of Corey and Stratus, and it's well deserved. I think Corey is the better of the two, but it's the elevation and the play of both of them together that has been the key to success for this team. I think the support line is fine. I've seen a mixed bag from Guido lately, right? He's popping off and showing up in the kill feed in a way I've not seen from him in a while. And that's great to see, but he's also just out of position and gets picked at times and tends to cause a problem for the team and instances or maps where they're not playing well. It seems to be the reason why to me. But I think Sansam and Janus have really been what's turned the corner for this team. Their ability to play adequately in this new tank meta has meant a world of difference for the team. I think it's going to be too much for Atlanta to overcome. Obviously they have FRD at tank now. Erster's been looking great. There's a lot of reasons to really like what Atlanta's doing. I won't be surprised at all if you want to flip this one. Go ahead. These are two teams I think that are in a very similar power level. I'm not as sold on Washington as people were, and granted people have come down a bit since the close games this week and they didn't just 4-0 Vancouver. But if I was here last week, I'd have been picking Houston, talking about how crazy it was that a team with 4 wins is being talked about like the best team in the league just because they won the last 2.
But they won the week before, bro. Like,
of course they're the best team. They're proving to be, I think, good to, adequate to very good in this meta, and we're going to find out exactly where. But, I don't know that anybody in the league's bothered to look at tape on the Washington Justice before last week, right? There's teams are going to figure them out to an extent, find ways to neutralize them, find their weaknesses, and we're starting
around that level of May too.
Yeah, they've been very impressive. There's no doubt about it. Great to see them turn it around, but yeah, I think they're going to be able to play spoiler here with no pressure, go in and squeak out a win against Atlanta, who needs it desperately, who's kind of the last of those teams that is way behind in number of games played, and therefore has a very wide range of outcomes. This is a hugely impactful matchup for Atlanta in the playoff race. It's what matters. The carefree, don't care, memeing with the camera with my sunglasses attitude of the Washington Justice, or the down to business, everything's on the line, do or die mentality that the Atlanta Reign are going to have. I can't wait to see this match, if for no other reason than just the mental battle that's going to be at play, right? The meme team versus the playoff dream. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm a Washington Justice fan, I'm very excited about their performances. Even the close matches, like, they weren't winning these close matches earlier in the season, right? Like they were not doing that, and like being able to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat, though it's still, I mean, at least before it was arguable whether that was the case or not, is much better and a greater indicator of long-term success than we 4-0'd the Vancouver Titans. We're the top of the world. We're never going to lose. Yeah, but also no.
Right.
So they definitely want it. Like, they're getting 3-2 victories versus Atlanta Reign, something like that. They're getting 3-2 victories against Houston Outlaws, they're able to beat teams like the Dallas Fuel. It's like all of a sudden they're playing a whole new series of placement matches. Granted, this all kind of resets starting next season, but
what they're really doing to me is this is an announcement to the league that when we get our new tank line and we come into next season, we have to be respected. We have to be in the running and considered to be a team that's capable of winning and performing well. It's the perfect time for that. As somebody that was terrified that they were getting 5 home games, I think it's great to see. It should do great to energize the fan base, which needs to be energized for all those games that are coming to their hometown show up. So yeah, great on them. But yeah, we're both taking them to get the win here and play the spoiler role.
Yep.
Atlanta's playoff odds will still be decent, I think, if they do lose here. So Atlanta fans, if it happens, don't freak out. You'll be okay.
Yeah. Also freak out because screw Atlanta.
Actually,
but
looking at your other match this week, I don't know, maybe not. I've got you guys going 0-2 this week. That would certainly put a damper on the chances.
Yeah, it might derail it a little bit. But let's move on here to the Chengdu Hunters versus the San Francisco Shock. Death, who you got?
San Francisco really didn't skip a beat in this meta. They look great. We talked to Frito going into the beginning of the stage. He was a little bit down on San Francisco in large part because he thought the Widowmaker wouldn't be quite up to snuff. Turns out Widowmaker not a big part of this meta, that's if that's correct, and Architect isn't able to keep up with the rest of the league, it really doesn't matter at the moment because it's just not needed. So they've been rolling. They've been swapping out some DPS players. Man, it's just, when you've got somebody like Rascal on your bench and you're not a coward and you're willing to use him, and you run into these metas where all of a sudden something like May is really, really important, there's no more valuable player that you can have. I mean, you want to talk about MVPs and players that didn't get benched on this team who aren't in the MVP race. He's got to be somebody that I think the way he picked up Baptiste and got such value out of it, and he was playing Brig, and now he's back to his main role on DPS and he's killing it on May. And it's just, he's so flexible and he's able to pick up and play anything at a top tier level, that he's just been a very nice glue for this team. To help them maintain success through multiple metas. I talked about what it would take for me to really put them in the top of the power rankings after they had like the golden stage or whatever. And I wasn't willing to put them into the elite. I needed to see them sustain the success over multiple metas and the elite play and the dominance. They're doing that now. So I think we really undisputedly have to think of them as the number 1 or number 2 team in the league right now. And with the falterings of
Vancouver.
Vancouver, it's hard not to think of them as the best at the moment. So yeah, I think they're going to get the win here 3-1. Chengdu is better than I thought they'd be in the DPS meta. They were able to kind of keep things fresh and keep themselves able to play outside the meta and be a bit of a surprise for teams, even though the meta normalized into damage and everything like that. They always find a way to make it their own and to do something other people aren't doing. So there's a solid chance here for Chengdu. San Fran with nothing to play for, Chengdu with everything to play for. But so big playoff implications here for Chengdu. Definitely worth keeping an eye on, but I do have San Francisco getting the 3-1 win.
Yeah, I've also got the 3-1 San Francisco win. Again, like you said, San Francisco has been that hallmark for consistency and top level play. We haven't, they lost to Houston early last stage, but besides that, I don't believe we've really seen much faltering from them after their stellar performances.
A close one versus the Gladiators early this stage. Let's see. They didn't play in the homestand weekend. They dropped 3-2 to Chengdu actually in week 4 of stage 3. So that was a different meta, but obviously more damage oriented. I think.
I think regardless that San Francisco is, I agree with you, that top tier team right now, especially when we're seeing New York doing whatever they do in final stages when they have everything clinched. Vancouver not being, the unbeatable monsters that they were. And not only that, but not necessarily looking as dominant or as strong on some of their performances recently. San Francisco really does look good, but like you just said, Chengdu has beaten San Francisco already, albeit in a different meta. Chengdu has a lot more to play for. I'm still going with San Francisco here 3-1, but if I'm echoing and trying to channel some of the enthusiasm for Chengdu that a lot of the Around the Payload hosts last week had, I think they might have this one a little bit closer, if not flipped in Chengdu's favor.
If you need a Hail Mary and pick'ems, though, go with Chengdu since they did win it recently. You can easily see it happening again. And there's only a couple weeks left to make a splash and try to claim the top spot.
Definitely a good flip. Next up, we got LA Gladiators versus Hangzhou Spark. This one, I wasn't really sure necessarily how to call it. Hangzhou has looked decent. They did just lose to NYXL, albeit very close. They did beat NYXL 4-0 the week before. They are looking quite strong. I've got Hangzhou here 3-1.
You know me, I can't pick against the Los Angeles Big Geese. I've got to go with them.
But they're no longer the Big Geese. They retired the branding.
Well, all right, then they lose 5-0. I don't know what to say. No, in all seriousness, these are two teams that are very difficult to predict at the moment. Obviously, you've got Hangzhou with the whole Crystal debacle and nightmare or whatever's going on there. But since he's not there, they're making do with what they have. It's been a bit of a decline for them. I do think you can kind of see them getting it figured out, getting the pieces into place, and starting to get it back in order. And the Gladiators have their own consistency problems. But part for part, looking at the rosters and lining them up, I just think the Gladiators are a better team. And I don't, when both teams kind of have their issues and it's close, I don't see a reason to get too much more in depth. And
doesn't need to be more complicated.
Who's the better team? Yeah. So
Roar and Decay are there. So is Surefour.
Right. I'd rather bet on them to pop off than Hangzhou to figure out a synergy problem in between weeks. So, I'll be taking the Gladiators here. That means we need the coin. We're going tails for the Gladiators, heads for Hangzhou, and we are on a heads day for this coin. So I might start switching.
I was going to say I was going to say if the coin agreed with you, I was going to just jump ship entirely. But I'm not going to vote against the coin. That's silly.
Right.
Not when it already agreed with me. Moving on to Saturday, we've got the Paris Eternal versus the Shanghai Dragons. I talked about Shanghai maybe not looking as stellar as they did previously. However, Paris is I think a different tier of team than Seoul. Maybe not, honestly, but in my mind they are. So I'm going with Shanghai here 3-1.
Yeah, I'm going to take the same result with the same score, Shanghai 3-1 here. Looking at what the Paris Eternal have been able to do, it's not been great. They did squeak out the 3-2 win against the remarkably inconsistent Philadelphia Fusion last week. Then the week before, they got 4-0'd by Atlanta. They got 3-1 by the New York Sandbaxior.
And that is the official Stage 4 name for NYXL.
Yes.
The New York Sandbaxior.
Sandbaxior, yeah. It's just who they are.
I've also got another new team name, which we'll be talking about in a little bit too.
But yeah, so I'm going to be taking the Dragons here. I don't think Paris looks a little better than I thought they would in the DPS meta, so I'm not going to fall out of my chair if Shanghai plays Youngjin too much or whatever and gives this one up. But I think Shanghai has to be the favorites here. So yeah, we'll both be taking them 3-1.
Yep. Next up, we got LA Valiant versus Boston Uprising. A bit of a moot point game, right? Valiant is still in, so they have something to play for. Boston technically does. If Boston wins versus Florida, they have to basically. If Boston gets a specifically 4-0 win versus Florida, they really have to thread the needle to even have a chance.
A 3-2 win over Florida would probably eliminate Boston.
Yeah.
I think their odds are that close. A 3-1 might eliminate Boston.
Right.
And a 4-0 win is basically
As
their
good a
only
chance as they
chance.
can get, right? So if Boston wins 4-0 versus Florida, they're still alive. I might be switching over to Boston, but unless that happens, I'm going with the LA Valiant here, 3-1. It's just, I mean, LA is not a world beater right now, but I still think there's a tier difference between Valiant and Boston right now.
Yeah, I think Boston's probably the worst team in the Overwatch League right now with the way things have shaked out.
Yeah.
Might not be that way record-wise. I just think they're the worst performing team at the moment. So I'm going to be taking the Valiant to win here. They have, had some slowdown, as you said. They're not world beaters. It was 2-1 versus Florida, but again, Florida's been tough. They did drop to the Dynasty in week 2 of this stage. Got the win against Dallas and squeaked out the win against Paris in the first week. So they're finding ways to win games, and right now that's all they need to do. And it's an opponent that's not altogether very difficult to figure out how to beat. So I'm going to go with the 4-0 here for the Valiant. I think they're going to do themselves a big service here for their chances to make it into the play-ins.
For sure. Next up, we've got Seoul Dynasty. Man, I'm really walking on eggshells with this. Seoul Dynasty versus...
As long as you say Seoul first,
that's
you're
true.
covered.
That's true. Versus the Philadelphia Dynasty. I mean, oh, no. The Philadelphia Fusion. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not... Philly is another one of those teams. Inconsistency. Seoul also inconsistency, but it's the same story, different teams. When it's inconsistency, I'm picking Seoul here. Give me 3-1.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about Seoul, and I've said a lot this season. They've not been bad at any point. Like, no matter what they do with their roster, they're not a bad team. And Philly often shows that they are a bad team. There's plenty of days they show up and play like garbage. When they're a team is doing that and another team is never doing that, I'm always going to pick the team that's just never playing terribly. Yep. So give me Seoul here to win 3-1. A very flippable game, I think. If you are looking for them, it's 74% for Seoul at the moment in pick'ems.
Oh yeah, that's a flipper. That's Flipadelphia right there.
Yeah, that's too high. So Flipadelphia.
Flipadelphia. For Philadelphia.
Yeah, so I think that one's a bit closer than the general consensus, or at least the fan pick'em percentages show. But the smart money here is on Seoul, so I'll be taking.
Yes. After that, we've got Chengdu Hunters versus Houston Outlaws.
The last match of the Houston Outlaws season.
Last of the season for Houston. Cue the closing time music. You don't have to go home, but you certainly can't stay here.
It's just so long before I get to see him play again.
I mean, I can't. I honestly can't tell if you're crying tears of sadness or joy that you don't have
it's
to.
It's both, man. It's both.
Joy that you don't have to see them flounder for anymore. You just see that's like, what is it? I won't spoil Game of Thrones, but in Last of the Mohicans, they do the same thing where he shoots an arrow at a guy to put him out of his misery because he's being burned at the stake. Yeah, that's what's happening with Houston Outlaws here, as I've got them losing to the Chengdu Hunters 3-2. I think this one's really close. But Death, I know you looked at the fan vote, and it is certainly closer than that.
88% for Chengdu. I want to see success for Houston, and I might use that at times in my pick'ems, but 88%. You guys are 88% sure that the Chengdu Hunters are going to beat anybody? I can't. I
think if you asked Volmel, he would agree with that 88%.
I mean, probably, but he's also been like a Houston detractor. He gives them credit where it's due when they're doing well. Then there's that as well. It's both ends of the spectrum, I think. Yeah. But I mean, just look at the results Chengdu has had. 3-1 loss to the Hangzhou Spark last week, while Hangzhou's not been playing that great. They 4-0'd New York, which, I mean, Chengdu's always been a team that can upset anybody at any given time. But the 3-2 loss to the Gladiators, barely squeaked out a win against Boston to start this stage, barely squeaked out a win against Philadelphia Fusion. If they're barely squeaking out wins against teams that are right there in the company of Houston as far as power rankings go, not standings.
Right.
it just stands to reason that there's a very reasonable or 50-50-ish chance here in this match of who's going to come out of it. I think I would have to really see some numbers to know for sure if I'm right. But assuming I am, I believe after things were eliminated for Houston, they started to play the Sombra a little bit more. It's funny I didn't get to do this rant last week. I'll just kind of do an abbreviated version of it now. Houston Outlaws week 1. Oops, we accidentally left Dante and realized Sombra was busted. So we're going to go ahead and play him the rest of this match and win. Q stage 2. Week 2. Dante's never leaving the stage, but we will be damned if we're going to play Sombra. I know a week ago it was busted, but now it's garbage. Play May or die trying, I guess. They died trying.
Yeah, they chose one of those, yes.
But then once things go to like, oh, dude, just do whatever, play what you want because it's over. Just have some fun out there, guys. Like, all of a sudden they're willing to play it again and go back to it. And they had some decent success with it and had a very good match against
I heard Bishop's looking for a team to coach.
Bring him in. I love you, Bishop. I always have. I've got tape to prove it. Okay, come on in. We need a strong leader to figure this team out. And I think you could do it. But yeah, I'm taking Houston. I mean, this one is to me 3-2 in either direction. Like if I'm going the other way with it. Looking at the maps, I think we're talking about ending on Route 66, which obviously Houston's comfortable on. They do have Hollywood in the pool, so I'm going to go 3-1 here. It could easily go the other direction. This could be a 4-0 either way. The range of outcomes is limited only to the range of your imagination. I think when a team that's eliminated goes up against a team that is completely unpredictable and does whatever the hell they want at any given time. But yeah, I'm going Houston because 88% in favor of Chengdu just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's no good. That does mean we need Mr. Coin.
Heads for Houston.
I was going to say, I'll give you your heads for Houston.
That's how the coin works today, and we do, in fact, have the heads.
There we go.
Yeah.
Heads for Houston. Yeah, that's another Flipadelphia because holy crikey.
88%.
Holy crikey.
Even if you hate Houston, you've got to be able to look at that and go, they've got a solid shot to win that one.
Yeah, they have better than a better than a 12% chance to win that one. On Sunday, we've got London Spitfire versus Atlanta Reign. We kind of talked about, actually we haven't talked about London, but London's still in wild card / playoff mode. They got a lot to play for. Atlanta also, I mean, depending on the result of the previous match, also has matches or has playoff implications as well. But London, I mean, they didn't do it last week, if I recall correctly. Yeah, they lost to. I mean, they lost to the Vancouver Titans 3-2. So London, I mean, arguably they're at the top of their game or at a very high point right now. I mean, taking Vancouver to 5 is certainly nothing to sneeze at. I mean, Atlanta's
they did drop to Florida 3-0 in the upset weekend, but that was so crazy. You almost just got to throw those out.
That week
it was an announcement that the garbage teams needed to be taken seriously, but there's nothing. I didn't panic about any of the teams that lost. Yeah, I'm not panicking about any of the teams that lost.
I'm panicking about New York, but I don't need to actually panic yet, so I'm just holding it off for the.
And you don't need to use week 2 in order to
right.
to rationalize that panic. So
I can use. The second time they threw in the playoffs, which was before Overwatch League happened. But that being said, I'm going with London here 3-1.
Yeah, Atlanta's got a good shot at this one, but London is to me just one of the teams that is agreeing and figuring out this meta and playing very well in it. They were a team I liked going into this meta because of the tank line's ability to play the heroes that were likely to be prevalent and are prevalent. So I expect things to continue going well for London. And unfortunately for Atlanta, I think they're going to deal a solid blow to their playoff chances. But it's going to be 3-2 here. You got 3-1. I've got 3-2. Yep. But ultimately, we still agree. So the coin doesn't need to show up heads again.
No need for a coin. Next up, we got Paris Eternal versus Washington Justice. And I never thought I'd say this, but I think this is a difference in tier levels right now. Washington seems to have jumped up a tier. Paris is still kind of. I mean, they might be the top and bottom of the same tier potentially, but Washington definitely seems like they're on a much hotter streak right now. This is one of those games that, a 3-1, a 3-0 victory here for Washington. That's starting to build up their resume of like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, okay, we had that splash where we crushed the Titans, but we're also getting our wins against Paris. We're also getting our wins against Mayhem. We're also getting, building up that resume of like, yeah, we got some consistent performances here. This is definitely one of them, and I think it's a very, it's telling for them, but also it's I don't think it's gonna be super hard either. I got Washington here 3-1.
Yeah, Washington's hot right now. I'm going to stay in the Flames and expect them to keep it rolling here. I'm going to go 4-0. I really don't have a lot of faith in Paris. Like I said earlier, they do look better than I thought they would, but Washington looks like they really have it figured out, and their players individually are performing much better than I think anybody on Paris is, and the team itself is performing better. There's a clear tier difference here to me. I'll go Washington 4-0. I wouldn't flip it either, for what it's worth. I don't know what the fan vote is on that one, but I wouldn't flip it.
No flips.
Oh, man. It's 94% for Washington. That's approaching flippable territory.
That's close.
But I'm still going to be taking
the 6% actually might be pretty close to correct.
That's right. Might not be. I mean, it's probably more like the 12% that wasn't good enough.
We'll put it this way. There's enough other flips this week where you don't need to make this one, I don't think, unless you're really far behind, in which case just flip everything. You need to shoot the moon to win. The penultimate match of the week is the Florida Mayhem versus the Toronto Defiant. We saw this match just last week, where we saw Florida win versus the Defiant. Death, who do you have here?
I'm going to take Florida here. I do think this is crazy close. I want to see the Logics versus Saya player duel in the battle of Who Caresville. Since neither of these teams can make it, but either way, they've both been great and a lot of fun to watch so far this stage. So I will be tuning in closely to this one as well. But give me Florida here 3-2. It pains me to say it. I'm just more confident in the main tank play at the moment, or the tank line as a whole, to kind of adapt. And when the Roadhog is on point, you don't need the diva, and I think that's going to work to Florida's favor at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going with the Floranto Defayhem here with a 2-2 draw, just to keep it nice and even here.
Well, we don't need the coin if you're going to make up a third team to win.
No, they're going to draw. They're not going to win.
That's true. If you picked a third team to win, you would need the coin.
If you flip the coin, it will just land on its side. So you don't want to break the coin, because it might open up a temporal. See, there it is.
I was going to say that doesn't break the coin. That breaks the universe.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're going by Twilight Zone logic, it stops time, and you can kind of walk around in this weird like time to stop, but go watch the old what is it, 60s or 70s episode. I don't know. Regardless, let's move on.
So hold on, what's the jersey look like for the Floranto? What is it? The Floranto
Defayhem. It's black and yellow. It's a bumblebee.
But it's also prison striped, so you literally just look like a bumblebee.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's got the third jerseys, and then it's also got the Miami Vice piping along the outer edges of it, just for no reason.
Yeah.
It would just take the worst jersey in the Overwatch League and smush it together with one of the best jerseys in the Overwatch League. Let's see what happens. I like it.
Someone please make this jersey.
I think the Pittsburgh Steelers already did it.
The old 70s or 80s stripes. Yeah, I know.
We just call them prison uniforms. They're hideous.
I think the Pittsburgh Pirates also may have done something similar to that as well with baseball. But enough about that as you're looking up in the background. But last match of the week here, we've got the Dallas Fuel versus the Guangzhou Charge. And I'm not picking Dallas to win. I'd probably pick them to win against Boston, but that's about it. And Guangzhou does not equal Boston. So give me Guangzhou here 4-0.
Guangzhou looks so good lately. It's scary. I did not see this coming for them. I thought they had a decent chance, but I thought they would use the new tank line to get some good synergy out of it and really kind of make a run from there. But they beat the Seoul Dynasty. They 4-0'd the New York Excelsior. They did drop to the London Spitfire, which I think is fine. They beat the Hangzhou Spark. They beat the Fusion. They 4-0'd the Boston Uprising. Yep. This team is hot right now, and it is in large part, I think, due to just kind of the maturation and just everything coming together for I think Nero is a huge part of this. Him coming in and getting comfortable with this team once he became of age, I think he was a big addition to this team. It did take him a little bit to get things under control, but him and Happy are playing great. We do get to see Eileen a little bit, so I just thought we'd mention that, because we needed some drops.
Yep.
And the tank lines look great. They looked iffy to me earlier in the season, but I think that's what happens when your DPS synergy is a little off. Maybe you're not getting the most out of your supports, and things have really come together for them. And they're doing so at just the perfect time, obviously, to find their way into the play-ins and maybe make a run. And I think they're just terrifying at the moment to me if I'm a team trying to hold my spot, and that's exactly what's going on for Dallas here. Dallas's playoff odds are pretty good, to be perfectly honest with you, until you factor in how they've been playing and the fact that they need to win some of these games in order to make it. But if you just treat every game like there's a 50% chance they win it, sure, their playoff odds are decent. That's not the case. They're just an absolute nightmare at the moment. Again, I love that OGE's back, but why are you tinkering with your flex support when you bring him back in? Try to get back some of that synergy that you lost when he came out, and it just seems not in Houston fashion or anything like that, but I feel like they're outsmarting themselves. They're outcoaching themselves a little bit. They're adding in obstacles and problems that they don't need to have when they already have, in my opinion, a substandard or a lackluster DPS core that was obviously going to be exposed by going into this meta to begin with. You're not going to make up for that with tank and support substitutions, so find the DPS pairing that works best and hope they get it together and find synergy, and that's not the track they've chosen. It's not what they're doing, and I think it's going to be to their detriment. I'll take Guangzhou here 3-1. I think OGE buys Dallas a map, but doesn't do more than that.
That's fair. I think Guangzhou is probably a pretty good pick for a dark horse these playoffs. I think they're not the favorite, I don't think, but man, they can certainly play spoiler and dream crusher for sure for a lot of different teams here. And I think it's going to start with Dallas, the last match of this week. But with that being the last match of the week, that does bring us to the end of the show. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about or mention before we get going here?
No, that's it for me. Glad to be back. Sorry I missed last week. I hope to never get sick again. We'll see how that goes.
Hey, that's what we all hope. Because although we did have a good episode with Kyle and
yes, it was great.
last week.
I did get to listen live. I was in the chat a little bit. Big thank you to both of them for filling in for me. Really appreciate it.
Yes, was a great episode nonetheless, but we miss you here. We miss you here. But that is going to be it, guys. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Make sure you check out us on all of the social platforms and all the podcast platforms to search for High Noon Podcast. We are everywhere that you could want to be. Just High Noon Podcast at any one of those things. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/High Noon Podcast. All of your support does help out a ton, especially as we're going to be going to the grand finals for Overwatch League coming up very soon here. All of the additional support does help and is greatly appreciated. But guys, that is going to be it for Deathblow. I am the Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
What do you think the mascot for the Floranto de Fayhem is?
The top half of Swoosh and the bottom half of Bishop.